so I can provide some value to your audience, especially, listening who maybe has a passion for fitness in the industry, but, really needs to know a lot more in order to run a successful business.
It's never done that to me. All right, but I think we're good now. So, like I was saying that, I think that the best way is to kind of gloss over the whole, training skills and talk about how you need to have leadership skills in order to elevate beyond the trainer. Like when you're building a team, building a corporate structure, building a franchise, and how integral that leadership is in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can talk about the other aspects of, the hard skills of marketing and sales. I can, touch on those, but typically speaking, that's my biggest zone of genius. And
okay.
I definitely can hit on all that and more. So I'm definitely solid in terms of your audience and how I can deliver.
Okay, perfect. All right. So what I'll do is I'll do the read in, the intro, and what are you, 29?
38.
38. You look 29.
Yeah, so they tell me.
Yeah, that's good. Good, clean lifestyle. Good, clean living. All right. So what I'll do is I'll do the voice in, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah. And I got about 45 as I look at the clock. So certainly want to deliver for you. Don't need to force it, but that's going to be my time frame.
Okay. And just real quick, how many franchise locations do you guys have?
Just over 300.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? And welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you learn that it takes more than being a great trainer to be a successful fitness business owner. And today we're bringing you a giant from Fit Body Bootcamp. We got Bryce Henson. Bryce Henson, who is the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp. And he's got an interesting story in that his background wasn't originally in fitness. It was in sales. Then he found fitness and had a transformation, and that's kind of his personal story, and fell in love with it, and then started looking into it, came on with Fit Body Bootcamp as a trainer, and now is the CEO. And they have over 300 locations. So very successful franchise. Bryce, thanks for taking the time, and welcome to the show.
Jim, thanks for having me on. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Did I miss anything in the intro?
No, that certainly does it always a little awkward here in your bio, but that's basically the nuts and bolts. And I'm sure we'll kind of dive in and get to know each other more over the course of the next 45 minutes or so.
Well, and today I know we want to talk about leadership, but first I want to give the listeners a little backstory about how you started as a trainer, and how you had to make that mind shift in order to elevate yourself in the organization.
Yeah, well, I think it's great. And I'll start out with a little storytelling about my transformation, because I do think it leads in, especially from like a mindset perspective. So I can provide some value to your audience, especially, listening who maybe has a passion for fitness in the industry, but, really needs to know a lot more in order to run a successful business. But for me, I'm originally from the Midwest. I moved to Southern California when I was 21 years old, just graduated from university. Actually, I got an internship in LA, and I was certainly excited to move to Los Angeles, California, the palm trees, the sunshine, the beaches. But after spending 10, 12 years,
traffic.
We'll get to that definitely, but yes, the traffic is for sure. But after spending 12 years in the Midwest, I mean, it was a great move, and certainly I have a lot of love, still an affinity for the Midwest. But one thing is for certain, it's not necessarily the fitness capital of the world in Detroit, Michigan, where I grew up. So as much as I was excited to be in LA, I found myself, 21, very green, 3,000 miles from home, very little professional skills to offer the world. And I wasn't a fit guy. I was 20 pounds overweight, which isn't, egregious, but, had a lack of self-esteem, lack of just confidence and enthusiasm, which I now possess. And so I lived that way for probably about a year and a half, 2 years, having more dark days than good. And a fortuitous situation happened to me. One of my buddies from college moved to California, Orange County, near Newport Beach. And he wasn't on the cover of Men's Health, but he certainly could have. He had the six-pack abs, the muscular physique, and certainly all the girls loved him. And I looked up to that. And so we ended up living together. And after a period of about 2 months, or a few months, I should say, I finally mustered up enough courage to say, hey, Adam, can you teach me a little bit about, lifting weights and getting fit? And he turned to me, he said, Bryce, yes. However, you went to college with us and with me, and you've seen dozens of guys ask the same question that failed. So if we're going to work together, I want you to commit that for 90 days, at least 90 days, you'll do whatever I say. And then after that, you can quit if you're so inclined. And thankfully, he provide that coaching. Because let's face it, when you're starting cold turkey, it was definitely challenging. I thought about quitting every day, but I stuck with it. And he introduced me to fitness. He introduced me to lifting weights and circuit training and nutrition. But most importantly, Jim, he introduced me to coaching and accountability. And I want to look you and your audience in the eye and say, without that coaching accountability, I would have been successful. And who knows, maybe I would, but I can't be for certain. And really, when I look back at that experience, about 6 months through that transformation, I dropped 20 pounds of body fat, put 20 pounds of muscle on, and it just changed my life. Way more than just getting the physique. It gave me more mental clarity, energy, enthusiasm. And we talked about in the intro, my sales career, I went from the lowest performing salesperson to the highest performing salesperson. And that really is what kind of led me to, have the idea to get in the industry, even though at the time I never thought it could be a full-time career. I just thought I was going to be a trainer in the nights and weekends. So I enrolled in National Academy of Sports Medicine, and really that's how I entered, starting training clients in the industry. And I'm happy to elaborate, on your true question now, which is really how I kind of made that shift. But certainly, if you have any feedback or follow-up questions before I allude to that.
Yeah, and I like that story a lot. I think it's important to have your origin story kind of anchor you and kind of be your North Star in your fitness career or fitness business career. I really do think that's important. And I'm a big believer in coaching. Anytime you want to level up on anything, whether it's your fitness, whether it's your fitness business, whether it's your podcast, you need to get coaching. I'm a big, firm believer in coaching. One question I have for you, though, and I have for all of my clients that come into my training studio, is what were the biggest hurdles for you to start?
Ooh, that's an incredible question. Jim, I got to be honest with you. The first, biggest limiting belief was actually myself, my identity. And after I went through that transformation, interestingly enough, we're shooting this in January of 2022. This is actually January of 2007, so 15 years ago. And I'm a completely different guy. 15 years in the industry and business experience and a lot of acumen now that I didn't have. But when I first even got fit, going through that experience, my identity hadn't changed yet to like a fit person. And it probably took a solid 2 years. And I'm glad I just didn't jump in right away. I kind of took a slow progression because I still needed to learn and master my craft, learn how to, really get my body into better condition, my mind in better condition. But the biggest hurdle, at least initially, was my own mindset and my own identity. And it wasn't until about 2 years later when I was at the gym and someone, some dude walked up to me and says like, hey man, how do you lift weights, or how do you do that set? And I looked at myself for a quick second and I'm thinking like, me, you're asking me? And really that was kind of like the first light bulb that really was overcome that first hurdle, which then led me to become a certified personal trainer through National Academy of Sports Medicine. And then, as we'll talk about later in the show, how I elevated to CEO.
Nice. Because that's always the $1,000 question, right? Is how do you lower that barrier to entry to get people in your gym? And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But first, I want to jump into leadership, because it takes more than being a great trainer to have a successful fitness business. It takes a totally different skill set. And leadership plays a big role in that, because you have to, in order to really elevate, you have to build a team, right? And then you have to lead that team. Like I call it ABC, you always have to be closing. When you're a trainer, every training session, you're selling, and when people come in the door, you're selling. And then when you become the manager, then you got to sell your trainers underneath you. And then when you become the owner, then you have to train the managers, you have to sell them. So it's always, I hate to say the term sell. It's more like bring them on board so that they understand what the mission, what the vision is, and start rowing in the same direction as everyone else. So you want to jump in there and talk about how you discovered that you needed the leadership skills, how you developed them, and how you use them to elevate yourself to the CEO, from a trainer to the CEO?
Yeah, no, great question. I would say trainer, janitor, I mean, bookkeeper, like everything to start, because that's really what it takes in order to be successful. But you hit it spot on. And this is something, now that I coach my brand and, have hundreds of thousands of clients worldwide, that's a big misconception for, true bred coaches who come in, and certainly that's what you need. You need passion, you need enthusiasm, and you need to have an understanding from the operational sense of the business. But actually, to your point, Jim, when you look at our Fit Body Bootcamp model, really any training studio, any proper business model in the industry, the coaching, the training in of itself, like from a trainer mindset, is actually the operational aspect or vector of the business. And if you take a step back, yes, every business has to have operations or fulfillment on, whatever their promise is, but you also need sales. You also need marketing, bringing people in the door, sales to convert them. You need to understand people, human nature, human resources, finance, accounting, and then really the $1 million skill set from my perspective, which I had no idea that it was going to be this influential, was leadership. Because especially as you start growing as a coach and you're able to bring on more clients and basically elevate yourself to different aspects of the business, on one hand, it's a very freeing, liberating thing, because in the words of Michael Gerber, famous author, you can start working more on your business and then instead of solely in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the casualty of that is you actually need to develop leadership skills, because now you have a team of people, or it starts with a coach and maybe starts then with an admin, someone who can do your operational or administrative work. But at the end of the day, you actually have to lead that person, which is a completely different skill set than coaching someone. And certainly there's similarities there, because from a leadership perspective, first and foremost, you need to be able to lead yourself, because if you can't lead yourself, how can you expect to lead other people, your team or company or clients? But really, as you your business grows and you elevate yourself even more, the stronger leadership skills you need to develop. And it was a very rude awakening for me. And it probably took, honestly, Jim, I'm really embarrassed to say this, probably a solid 2 full years before I had this big aha that's like, okay, when I'm laying down the vision, or I'm laying down like what we need to do from a training program, why isn't my team or why are my coaches like fully bought in, or like, why aren't they really taking action? And the answer was because I was an ineffective leader. I didn't communicate well enough. I wasn't clear in my vision. I didn't give feedback. And now I joke around, yeah, my title is CEO, but many times I feel like I'm the CFO, which I in my mind stands for the Chief Feedback Officer. And that's all part of leadership. So it was a rude awakening. It took me probably a solid 2 years to fully grasp that concept. But thankfully I did. And that's really the big message of many that I want to impart in your audience, that, you have to acquire way more, a lot more skills than just coaching, which is a good start. But it's more than that. And leadership will definitely, be the biggest skill that I've developed that's really led to my success today.
Yeah, that's all great stuff. And I'm on board 100%. I think one of the simplest tests to determine if you're doing a good job leading your team or not is if I walk by and I hear somebody says, well, they want us to do it like this, then I'm not doing a good job.
Correct.
If I walk by and they go, well, this is the way we do it, and this is why we do it, then I've hit the nail on the head. Right. And
Yep.
to your point about, looking at yourself, Tony Robbins always makes that point. You should work 4 times as hard on yourself as you do your business, because as you go, your business goes, so it takes a tremendous amount of self-reflection, looking at your weaknesses, looking at your strengths. I know for me, when I first started out, I was kind of that trainer, kind of hardcore meathead. I'm a rehabbed meathead.
Nice.
And so mine was like, okay, this is the way you're going to do it. And if you don't do it that way, then tough, because I'm going to be here and you're not. Well, nobody wants to work for that guy.
No.
Right. Nobody feels like, okay, this guy's going to take care of me. He's going to, I'm going to be able to grow with this company, and create a successful career out of this. None of that. They're like, I don't want to work for this guy. This culture sucks. I'm out of here. Right. Mm-hmm. So then you have a tremendous amount of turnover. So I think all of those are relevant. So where did you start with developing your leadership skills?
books, and what you just said, Jim, really was spot on for me. And John Maxwell, who I'm sure you're a student of, or at least read his material, and if your audience hasn't, certainly would highly recommend you just Google John Maxwell leadership, and you're going to get a wealth of knowledge. And actually, I was just talking with one of my teammates yesterday, who's young developing leader, and she just needed some feedback because the team wasn't really connecting as much as that she wanted. And really what it comes down to is relationships. And I feel for me, I feel like lucky in some ways because I love people, I love connecting, I have a very high level of empathy. So there's a lot of things that really come naturally from that perspective. But really, to answer your question, I started pouring myself in books, and the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which John Maxwell wrote. And he just mentioned, or you just mentioned a different way, his first law, which is the law of the lid, meaning you are the lid on your business. Like your business will never outgrow you. So if you want to grow your business, you need to grow yourself. And you mentioned Tony Robbins says in a different way, but that's just so spot on. So I started devouring that book, 5 Levels of Leadership, and just really devoted myself to understanding how people work, because really leadership is the understanding of human psychology, human behavior. And so I really went deep, and I've come a long way. A lot of trials, a lot of lessons, a lot of tribulations, a lot of failure, a lot of bad leadership, if I'm being very candid with you. But I think that's how we learn. And for me, to kind of put a bow on this, it's still a work in progress. Like if I look back in the last 5 years, I am way better of a leader than I was 5 years ago. But when we have this conversation, when I look back at this interview 5 years from now, I better look back and be embarrassed at where I am right now from a leadership perspective, because I always want to be leveling up. And I think from a leadership perspective, and really a champion's mindset perspective, you have to have that continual growth perspective in order to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. You always have to be open to learning something new. And also, somebody told me, I can't remember, but they said, never be afraid to be the dumbest person in the room. And I've taken that to heart. And I agree with you. Leadership is understanding how people work and tapping into the way they work and their motivation. I used to coach high school hockey another lifetime ago. And the way I used to refer to it is that you had greyhounds, you had St. Bernards and a couple other breeds, and then you had the goalie, they're the weirdest ones. But if you have a couple of greyhounds, you got to run them, because that's what they do. If you got a couple of St. Bernards, maybe you put them in the position that they're going to be successful in. But it's understanding, like you said, and talking to and getting relationships and understanding what motivates them, what they need, how to say things so that they hear them, all of that stuff. So I think studying, reading books, I'm a big believer in reading books. But personally, like where did you start? Like, as far as I know, for me, I always take an inventory of strengths and weaknesses. So where did you start with, okay, this is where I have to start improving my leadership skills?
Well, I think it just came down to like the lack of traction. I remember one time, this is early on in my leadership skill or leadership, journey, and I just had launched my second location. So from the years of 2012 to 2018, I scaled to a handful of locations within our Fit Body model, as I started as an owner, as an operator, as a janitor, as the coach, all things considered. And I remember there was a transition of one of our teams and teammates, and I changed my office from the previous office, and I just kind of flipped it to the other office, just kind of swapped, if you will. And I remember I didn't actually communicate with my team. I just kind of did it because I'm the CEO, I'm the boss, I can do whatever I want. And in the grand scheme of things, do I have that opportunity and privilege to do so? Yes. However, it would have been a much better, strategy or tactic just to give the team a heads up. Hey guys, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Do you have any objections before we go there? Because what happened is I didn't actually communicate that. So I just made the switch. And the next day it like rearranged one of my coaches. And at the end of the day, it wasn't the end of the world, but it kind of messed up her flow. And I gave her no visibility beforehand. But I think it was just my ego, this like mindset of like, just because my title is CEO, like I could do this, particular move. And yes, I can have the authority to, but not the influence to without handling it the proper way. So it's about, being able to learn your people, communicate with your people, set expectations. And you said it best when you were kind of talking about being your reformed meathead. No one likes to work with someone or for someone who has an ego. So the biggest learning lesson that I learned from a leadership perspective is literally my title does not matter. Throw that away. I do not lead. I lead as if I'm literally a coworker from a colleague approach. And yes, I have authority. I can make the final decisions as needed, but I do not show up like that, because another big learning lesson is, having an ego is going to just basically ruin your business. And so I think just more trial by error, little lessons like that here or there, little tweaks, diving back in the business, executing, and then learning and reflecting. And I'm a big believer of Stoic philosophy, which really talks about reflecting and journaling. That can provide you a lot of clarity. So aside from the books, to really put a bow on this, Jim, being a constant student of leadership, listening to podcasts, those are all things I did and I continue to do. But for me, it was just about trial by fire, executing, doing something, making a mistake, and then adjusting from there, and having that self-awareness to realize that, hey, I might be wrong in these situations. So how can I course correct?
Yeah. Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's really important. I mean, now when I talk with my team about policy changes or changing something in the business, I ask for their feedback. And sometimes what I think isn't what they think. Matter of fact, most times it's not. Every once in a while, I'll pull that veto power, and say, no, this, I have a little bit more information than you guys. We're going to do this, and this is why.
And what you have to do at times, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But, most of the time, like most recently, we had this mask issue. And so, I didn't want to do the mask, but I talked to the team. They're like, yeah, we should do the mask. So I'm like, okay, we'll do the mask. But it's just one of those things when you loop them in, it helps them buy into the process, and they feel like, okay, I'm part of this. We're a team. We're going to grow. This is good for all of us, myself included, all of that stuff. And then I like what you said also about the Stoic philosophy and the meditation and the journaling, because I'm a big believer in getting clarity, because if you don't know what you're aiming for, you're never going to hit it. So you need to get clarity on, okay, this is what I want. These are my goals, and this is when I want to get there. And this is what I want it to look like when I get there. And then you get that clarity, and then you can focus on the end result instead of the personalities or the ego or the emotions or anything like that.
Yeah, totally. And, Jim, what you just said really struck a chord with me about getting buy-in, because that's really what leadership is. You have to understand, humble yourself in the fact you need teammates who can add velocity, to your business, right? So at the end of the day, you can't be that leader that's just barking orders left and right, because then you have no buy-in, which you just mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. And John Maxwell talks about influence, leadership. The definition of leadership is just really influence, nothing more, nothing less. So do you have influence on your team? That's the definition of a leader. And Jocko Willink, who I'm sure you follow and read his concepts, one of the things that he really struck a chord, and you just practice it with the mass thing. If you want influence from your team, you actually first have to give influence to them. So what you did there, instead of just saying, hey, we're not doing mass, and off we go, then your team's going to feel cornered. They're going to feel like not included. They're not bought in. But if you take a step back as a leader and say, all right, guys, what do you want to do? And when you ask for their feedback, sometimes you go in a different direction, but you at least make sure that they feel heard. And when you make sure they feel heard, and when you give them influence on the decision, then when you give influence, then they have more influence and really give you more influence in return. And you have more team buy-in. And then ultimately the end result is you get to hit the results that you're looking for. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. And then once you get that buy-in, then you get somebody who's really committed to the mission and the vision of the company. And it actually takes less work. They start doing things on their own, because they feel confident in where, everybody feels the company should go, the direction in which the company should go. So, and then you are able to build it. So take us through, one location to CEO and how your leadership skills developed along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I'll take you that journey, and then really, I think what I'll do is give you the framework that I've compiled in my own experience of really the 4 C's of leadership, which I've developed that framework for to keep me in tune and my eye on the prize. But to pick up from a storytelling perspective where I left off, I went through my own transformation. I got super excited. Someone came up to me at the gym and said, "Hey, Bryce, how do you lift weights?" And this eye-opening experience happened where I was like, you know what? I want to give back the gift of fitness, which was given to me. So I became a certified personal trainer. I think I updated my Facebook profile to National Academy of Sports Medicine certified. And I started receiving ads from this gentleman named Bedros Keuilian, who now is a dear friend, a mentor of mine, a business partner, and he's the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp. And this is back in 2010. So, from there, I put in an expressive interest. I started learning about the brand. At that point, I actually, took a traveling trip, a hiatus for 2 years, lived in South America, checked off that box, had an incredible experience before I came back and actually opened my first Fit Body location. And I did that in the fall of 2012, which is crazy to believe as this interview is taking place in 2022, a solid decade ago, or close. It will be in November. But basically, that's how I hit the ground running with my first location and was able to scale relatively quickly. Had a lot of trials, a lot of tribulations, a lot of false starts, but also learned a lot and executed a lot. And, to your point earlier, you believe in coaching. I believe in coaching as well. And I had to still have to this day, Bedros, or B, we call him for short, an incredible business coach. And I think I gained a lot of clout and merit with him because he'd say, "Hey, Bryce, do these 3 things and I'll see you in 90 days. And I would do those 3 things and the business would grow. And then I'd see him in 90 days. And really that led me on the journey from the first location to the second location, up scaled to a handful of locations within 5 years. I ended up bring my wife on board. She was there from the early days, brought my mom and my brother and my sister at the time. So kind of made it a family affair as we scaled the locations. So that's basically how, that journey, took hold. And then it wasn't until about 2018, so about 3.5 years ago, is when, at that point, I scaled a handful location, had built a strong relationship with Bedros and the HQ team, and our brand was continuing to hockey stick. And B knew that he needed, some help, support, some strong leadership to really help grow and scale the brand. So he reached out to me and offered me his VP role, and he gives me a hard time to this day. Like, I ended up not accepting it, at least at first. It took me a few minutes or a few months and a few conversations. And I like to say, like, hard charging entrepreneurs, I mean, we have our mission, we have our focus, and I was scaling locations at the time. But he said something that struck a chord, which, I've always wanted to be a very financially successful person. But I've also said, if it was totally about the money, I would be like, corporate finance or real estate or something. I wanted to be successful financially while incorporating a passion of mine. And he said, "Bryce, I really do think that you can have a bigger impact. You can change more lives. You can have more influence on our world if you take this role instead of just building your locations." And Jim, I took a step back and I said, "You know what? I think this guy's right." So I ended up joining the headquarters team in June of 2018. This is, 6 years being in the brand at that point. And over the following 3 years, basically built our coaching and profitability team, joined the leadership team, worked on building better businesses, processes, and coaching for our brand. And in June of 2021, which would be last year, at our awesome, huge world conference event with over 400 to 500 people, he passed the baton to me and awarded me the CEO position. And I, still humbled to this day. I think it's a really cool experience. The fact that, an owner, the janitor, Fit Body Bootcamp client could really start, because I'm still a client to this day, but start in that capacity and work his way up. And, to put a bow on this, I always like to say, I mean, certainly the American dream has had many shifts and movements throughout the years, but it's still alive and well. And if a guy like me with really, little professional skills, not no pre-factory installed leadership skills, but just hard work ethic that can scale to be the CEO, I think anyone can.
Yeah, with a little humility thrown in there too. And you're kind of a living, breathing credibility to the culture of Fit Body Bootcamp, because literally you've gone from, being a trainer, cleaning bathrooms, doing whatever, answering phones, doing what you got to do,
Yep.
to a CEO. So when you talk to, your direct reports, then I'm sure that carries a little clout.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. I mean, I feel blessed. I have an incredible team, and I value relationships not only from our team but also to our franchisees. I'm one of them. I still have 2 Fit Body locations. So again, I'm still a client of Fit Body. I'm still an owner. I'm still a multi-location owner, and I think that's really helped me leverage the relationship perspective to really get buy-in from the brand and buy-in from the team. And I feel very grateful and also just very humbled, but also very excited that right at this point, even though we've had a very challenging 2 years with COVID, and we're still kind of working ourselves out of this, but our team at headquarters from top down is the strongest it's ever been. So people ask me the question, like, what's the next, year, 2, 3 years look like? And certainly we're still going to experience our fair share of challenges, but man, the outlook is bright, and off we go.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize the importance of culture enough. And it sounds like you guys have a really good culture there at Fit Body, and Boudreaux is part of that. You're a part of that. But it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that it's like a family to you. And that's the way it should be, because families take care of one another and families help each other. Families got each other back, and they support each other, and they grow together. And that's what you want your business to be, right? You want it to be a family that has your back, you have their back, and you're all growing together. I want to be respectful of your time, Bryce. And I know we got a late start, my fault. But I want to end with 3 questions that I really enjoy. It's my favorite part of the show because we get to peek behind the curtain that is Bryce. And they're not gotcha questions, but we get great answers.
Nice.
My first one is, what has been your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, at the time, it seemed like a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take life lessons from it that propelled you to greater success down the road.
Oh, incredible question. I'm going to give you a deep answer. Jim, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and embarrassingly, on one hand, my father was an alcoholic, still is, drug addict, addicted to gambling. And, at the time I didn't, understand the genetic component. Now, granted, my mom escaped the house with her 3 kids, myself included, back when I was 10 years old. So I didn't really have that, interaction daily. And I was more of a binge drinker than I was a daily drinker. When I thought of an alcoholic, I thought of someone without a job, literally living under a bridge, drinking a brown bag. And that was just never me. I was always very highly motivated, always, achieved a decent amount of success. But when I would drink, it would just be in excess. And it was more of a binge drinking type on the weekend. And to answer your question, in 2017, had experience, and my sister, who I love and care dearly, it was the facility leader. Actually, she created an incredible culture at our location. And, she, along with me, suffered from the same genetic disorder, and had many conversations, because unfortunately for her, things were kind of slipping into the professional realm. And we kind of set a plan that we were going to both be clean and sober, and or she was, in terms of condition of working together. And Jim, after that conversation, I went home. I certainly very sobering at that, no pun intended. And I went to sleep, and I woke up. And when I woke up, I took a deep, hard look in the mirror. And I thought to myself, how am I going to expect this of someone if I don't expect that for myself? And, I realized that our society will forgive criminals, but not hypocrites. And it's just not a situation that I want to continue as her older brother, as a leader, because I realized I had failed in many ways as an example. So, I had that strong look in the mirror, and, thankfully short thereafter, I checked myself into a support group. And that was the last time I ever drank alcohol, which I just celebrated 5 years. At the time, it was an absolute disaster. Ended up having to part ways with my sister for those reasons, lost a third of my clientele within 90 days, like going through that experience. So, like, on one hand was the biggest disaster of my life, but honestly, Jim, to your point, it was actually the biggest blessing disguised as a tragedy, because the growth I've, been on, the journey I've been on to develop myself as a person, has been incredible. And it wouldn't be possible without me stopping drinking alcohol. So for me, that is my blessing disguised as a tragedy.
Well, congratulations on 5 years. That's not easy. I know 30 days is tough for a lot of people, and they don't get 30 days. So 5 years is amazing. So what type of lessons did you take away from getting clean and sober that helped you help propel you to greater success down the road?
Daily lessons, on leadership, to be able to lead yourself, realizing that I'm an action taker, Jim, you're an action taker. You can just feel the vibe and the energy. But sometimes you got to slow it down. And literally, even though we're both visionaries, at the end of the day, I didn't actually complete 5 years of sobriety. I just did it one day at a time. And I know it sounds so cliche. And who knows, granted, I just celebrated 5 years and I hope it, I celebrate another 5, 10, et cetera. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the coaching program that I'm a part of is the most experienced guys in the group with the most time. I'm talking about 20, 25, 30 years. They always talk about, hey, one day at a time. If I don't drink today, well then, hey, that's a huge victory. And if you keep stacking wins like that, I think it's a great life lesson on leadership, on business, on physical transformation, business transformation, is having a big vision, but literally putting one step in front of the other.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Congratulations. It's a great story. You got all kinds of cool origin stories, man. All right. And then my next question is, since you've been in the fitness industry, what is the biggest surprise that you did not see coming? And I used to say COVID is exempt, but I'm taking that rule out because I think a lot of good things came out of COVID. Like what you just touched on is slowing down. I think COVID was a great opportunity to slow down and kind of take stock. And a lot of people did, because that's why we're having this great resignation now. Because people are wanting to do more with their lives. So I think some good things came out of COVID. But with that said, what was the biggest surprise you had to deal with since coming into the fitness industry?
Well, to the elephant in the room, COVID is definitely, especially, managing it. And, you live in New York, I live in California, very hard, restricted states. And managing through that is just, was a nightmare, as you would imagine. But also steering the ship of a brand of, hundreds of locations that had additional complexity. So that statistically would definitely be it. But I'll actually, give you more of a boots on the ground answer. And hopefully this actually, is a good message to your audience. But it sounds so simple, but when I got fit, I went through my own transformation. So I thought, okay, I am in the fitness industry. Okay. And on one hand, I'd be right. However, that's not the real industry that we're in. The real industry that we're in is the people business. This is the relationship business. And that business is actually, you talked about culture. That is the secret sauce of any successful training program, of any successful boutique studio. Yes, you have to have a great fitness training program, do all the X and O's right to get your clients results. But it starts with the focus on the people, the focus on the relationship, the focus on the culture. And when you do those things right, the rest takes care of itself. So for me, that was probably the biggest mind shift that took me about 2 years to fully realize.
Amen, brother. I couldn't have said it better myself. And then my last question is, where do you go for your personal and professional development? I feel like you've already answered this, but I want to dig a little bit deeper.
I'm a student of learning. So one of my coaching clients said that she's addicted to know, not N-O, but K-N-O-W. And I feel like that really struck a chord with me. So my mind's always listen to podcasts and books and leadership. But typically what I do, I'm a huge believer in, I'm a philosopher, if you will, a student of Stoic philosophy. So I love Ryan Holiday's work, and especially being the CEO of an organization. I mean, there's a lot of awesome things that come with it. But in the words of Elon Musk, when you're the CEO of the organization, you get all the shit problems that no one either can or wants to deal with. So when you work through those on a day in, day out basis, I'm always trying to develop my mind. So really pouring myself into meditation, leadership, Stoic philosophy, understanding that the obstacle is the way. And really the last thing that I've been doing as of late is I just moved into a new house, which I'm really grateful for. And even though California has very warm weather in the mornings and the evenings, even in the summer, actually, it's really cool because there's really no humidity. So I take a 3 to 4 minute cold plunge in my 50-degree water and pool every morning. And that really has a lot of physiological benefits, increases my immune system and my mental clarity, my energy. But the biggest thing it does, it actually develops my mindset, because I think to myself, if I can jump in this freezing cold pool for 3 minutes and really set my mind or give myself the mental edge, shoot, man, I am, well ahead of the day and well ahead of my competitors. So for me, I mean, there's multiple sources of personal development, and those are just a few.
Yeah, I agree. It's the Stoic tenet of living your worst fear. And then like, if this is my worst fear, then I can handle this, I can take on anything else.
Totally. I'm like, if I can jump in that pool for 50 degree when no one's watching for 4 minutes, if I can do this to start my day, no one can compete with me.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Bryce, this has been great, man. I appreciate you taking the time because I know you're busy. You're CEO of 300 plus locations and growing. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing this valuable information with our listeners. Where can people go to get more information, learn about franchise, learn about Fit Body Bootcamp, all that good stuff, or get in contact with you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So my handle on all social media is Real Bryce Henson, not to be confused with fake Bryce Henson. So that's where you can find me, but it's also my website as well, realbrycehenson.com. And if you're interested in fitness program, just click on coaching fitness. If you're interested in potentially opening a franchise, click on the coaching tab and then business. But that's the best way you can find us. And would love to stay connected with you and your audience. And I appreciate you having me on, Jim. Certainly passionate about our mission, our vision, our values, and really your audience speaks, a lot to me because I've definitely been there. And you're a great interview and a host. And I had a great time, and love to stay in touch.
Great. Same here. I would love to reserve the right to have you back on because this has been, excuse me, great. And there's so much that we can touch on. I mean, I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface with leadership, but there's so much that goes in from going into from a trainer to a CEO that, you can't fit it all in one show. So I would love to have you back on.
I'll take you up on that. But
awesome.
I thank you so much. It's been a great time.
Same here, man. Same here. Have a good rest of your day and have a good weekend.
Thanks, Jim. You too.
All right. Thanks, Bryce. And then what I'll do is when this, I'll probably edit this weekend and release it on Tuesday. Okay. So either Monday or Tuesday, I'll send you all the stuff, the links, artwork, copy, all of that stuff so that you can push it out through your network. And if you can send me, if you have any headshots, high resolution headshots, you can send me a couple of those too. That would be great.
Yeah, no, I'll get on that right now, actually, before my next call. And then, if it's pushed out to next week, awesome. I'll be able to push it out. I'm usually kind of backlogged for a few weeks, but by the end of February, I have a nice list of about 40,000. So, if you send me all that content copy, I'll push this out and make it a win-win.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right. Bye.